Well, the governance of the UK, A, is probably linked with Brexit because Scotland is saying all sorts of things about what's the implications of them. Northern Ireland and the Irish border, they are coming into the whole scene. What do you see the future for the government of the United Kingdom? We're currently in a pretty hotspot of a framework, aren't we? Scotland and Ireland with different systems, different voting systems, different power structures. It can't go on English votes for English laws. How on earth is all this going to unravel?
Well, my attitude is a very subjective one. As a Welshman, I am of course interested in the future of the United Kingdom as a community, but infinitely more interested in my own land and nation of Wales and what part that has to play. It may be that some form of federalism is absolutely necessary. Many people will say, well, how can you have that when there is such an imbalance in terms of population? Well, many countries have overcome that. In the United States, you have two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives is very much on a population basis, more or less one representative for X hundreds of thousands of people. The Senate is totally different. The 50 states each have two representatives. California has two. Washington has two. Florida has two, with all the massive populations.
Yeah,
Rhode Island
two. Yeah,
has
yeah.
only two,
Yeah.
and so on. And it works. And it may very well be that we will have to put up with some sort of system like that, where there is a chivalry that is prepared to accept that minority voices have their validity as well. And it may very well come to that. Now, on the broader issue of exactly what is to happen in relation to Wales, you have got this huge constitutional conundrum to sort out. It started, or it came to light in 2014. There were two cases in June and in July, August, before the Supreme Court, deciding exactly what devolution meant. Many people up to then, everybody up to then, had thought the devolved powers, which have been devolved bit by bit, in other words, the conferred powers,
Yes.
the confetti of them, hundreds of them, you haven't got the authority unless you have had it specifically devolved. No, said the Supreme Court, which is the successor of the old House of Lords, the highest tribunal in the land. No, unless there is a specific exception, where there is a general intention to transfer, then you will have that power unless it has been specifically excluded, which is a very different thing. With the consequent result that even if you are the brightest and the cleverest lawyer in the land, you will not be able to point to almost any situation and say, I am certain that that has been transferred or that that has not been transferred. There is a total dubiety about everything.
So it's chaos.
Chaos, and the government, in fairness, had said, well, we'll sort this chaos out in this way. We will have a reserved constitution. In other words, a reserved constitution is this. We transfer everything except A, B, and C. That is the pattern of devolution for Northern Ireland and for Scotland. But the pattern for Wales was very different. It was a conferred constitution, bit by bit, confetti. Now, if you start off with two sheets of clean paper, you can decide very easily between a conferred constitution and a transferred constitution. But in this case, you have a conferred constitution for years and years and years, and you've got to convert that somehow or another into a transferred constitution. I think you can do it in one way. It has to be a clean sweep. It's very much the same as a country changing over from driving on the right to driving on the left. It does it by saying, at 11 o'clock at night, nobody shall drive again for an hour.
Yeah.
And then at midnight, you drive on the other side.
The new system.
And we could do it in this way by saying every power devolved at 11:59 will be cancelled. And at
Midnight.
1200 there will be A and B and C subject to reservations. The government are in a huge stuck because in the Wales Bill, now before the House of Commons, they are saying there will be a reserve constitution, but there will be 250 reservations and more to come. Madness. That's not a reserve constitution. That's a mess and a chaos. And we in the House of Lords, it's not a case of trying to rub the government's noses in it at all. We'll have to sort that out in some way or another. Now, the only way to do it, I think, if I may say so, is much the same as the illustration about the changing over from driving on the right and driving on the left. It can be done, but it can only be done if the mandarins of Whitehall are prepared to be honourable and chivalrous towards Wales, and if the old imperial instincts of the Conservative Party in relation to Wales, that we should be still kept as a subservient colony.
Do you think the Labour Party would understand what you're saying and agree with it?
Well, if they don't do that, they're in a mess. Wales is in a mess. That's the only way out.
Yeah.
I know there are many in the House of Lords, people of all parties, who tend to the same view as I have articulated.
So why do you think Wales has ended up in this situation? Let's go to, you say the mandarins. What about the politics? You know what I mean? Why don't we have the same clout politically? I know it goes back over years, not just now. What has caused it?
We don't have the same clout politically as far as the Tories are concerned for this reason. Since 1872, and that's the year that the Ballot Act was passed, as you know, when it was no longer necessary for tenant farmers to vote in the presence of their landlords and be turned out if they did the wrong thing. Since 1872, the Conservatives have never won a parliamentary majority, either of votes or of seats in Wales.
No.
That's a huge fact, but it's a fact. They did get a majority once, but that was in an European election. But in parliamentary election, no. So you can say really that Wales is the most non-Tory country in Western Europe. And that remains so. Now, as far as the Labour Party is concerned, there is a dichotomy there. There are many members of the Labour Party, I think, who are radical and who are energised to say, well, we must win for Wales something worthwhile constitutionally. In other words, to use the words of David Cameron the very day after the Scottish referendum, Wales will be at the heart of devolution. We want to be at the heart of devolution. But the bill before Parliament is not at the heart of devolution. It's a mess and an impossibility. And I am determined to see to it that in some way or another,
sort it out.
in my day or thereafter, that we are at the heart of devolution.
Well, you know, you're well known in all these things going back to the 50s and the 60s. How about English votes for English laws?
I think that that is one of the most nonsensical vulgarities that we have in our day. Think of it in these terms. There are 550 members for English constituencies. There are roughly 100 members for Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. There is no instance in the modern period ever of the Celts having overthrown the English. There is no danger whatsoever of the Celts ever overthrowing. In other words, there is no danger of the 100 overthrowing the 550.
No.
The best argument is a majority. They're talking nonsense. Anglo-Saxon pride and prejudice, but nonsense.
It's a bit like, to be honest, it's a bit like how Cameron pandered to UKIP on Europe.
If you show me there's any danger of the Celts, the 100 of them, strangling the 550, I'll talk to you.
Well, there we go. That's it.